Hey everybody, this is your Right Geek, honorary Man King and leader of the Awkward Cough Squad, here with another Iron Man review. Today we're going to be covering Iron Man number 168, and I'm sure you're wondering, why is it lately you've been doing all the drunk Iron Man issues? And my answer to that question is, I don't know, I'm just in the mood for angst currently, so I'm reviewing all the angsty issues. And that's just how it goes. So anyway, we have here number 168. This is an issue in which we have a guest appearance by Machine Man. Poor Machine Man. Machine Man shows up at Stark's factory for a very innocent reason. He basically believes that Iron Man is a robot like himself, so he just wants to strike up a conversation with Iron Man, maybe become friends or whatever. Unfortunately for Machine Man, Tony is in no condition to respond appropriately to his appearance, because currently Tony is still drunk from the last issue that we reviewed. And he thinks that Machine Man is basically just another one of Obadiah Stane's lackeys going after him. So he's not in the mood to see this as a friendly. He sees it as someone who is going to attack him. So he thinks he's being attacked. He says, can't deal with him like this, gotta get sober. So he tries to get sober, no good, still drunk. And then he says, I'll be okay once I get my armor on. Armor will make everything alright. Now I tabbed this one because armor will make everything alright is, again, that's a really classic Tony Stark panel right there, because as we've talked about in many of the other videos in this series, armor is one of the things that this theme of armoring, that's one of the things that Tony relies on. The armor for him it's basically a crutch. It's something that protects him from the outside world. And you see him basically saying explicitly, armor will make everything all right. He can't deal with himself as himself. He has to cover it up behind a mask. And we can see here that he's struggling to get the armor on. He gets sick. Meanwhile, Machine Man is bursting in because all he wants to do is just talk to Iron Man. But again, because Tony is still hurting from the betrayal in the last book, what he thinks is, then fogged with alcohol, he remembers injuries, the woman he trusted and finally loved, the woman who betrayed him and to his worst enemy, and laughed as she told him so. And so what he assumes is, you're another one, aren't you? You come from Stane. So they get into this huge fight. Where they're breaking windows, crashing through walls, and it's all because Tony because he's iron under the influence, he misunderstands the reason why Machine Man is here. And Machine Man, meanwhile, is just trying to disable Tony so that these poor civilians that are kind of in the way of this fight don't get injured. Meanwhile, we have Rhodey here trying to get back. He got mixed up with some of Stane's men, and now he's trying to get back to Stark Industries. And this is kind of funny because he goes in whiteface essentially in order to escape from some of these Stane goons that are trying to prevent him from leaving. And then we come back to the fight's still going on. And what happens what happens ultimately is during the fight, Tony messes up an experiment that some of his employees were doing. He basically destroys this machine that they were developing because he's drunk and he's just not situationally aware of what he's doing. And ultimately, Machine Man uses some of his abilities to disable Tony, and then he nopes right on out of there because, as he says, when he finally reactivates the armor after Tony has been subdued, Machine Man says, "He's getting up, and that's my cue to exit. Hastily. I don't want to meet the man inside the metal. Ever, under any circumstances. I have a feeling he has something profoundly wrong with him. He's damaged, as only human beings can be damaged." And meanwhile, Tony gets up, and he's really not sure exactly what happened. Yeah, like as he says here in this panel, "And I'm not sure where the last day and a half went. I fought who? An android?" Something like that. So he's not even fully aware while this whole fight is happening. So what he decides to do is basically run away. And I tabbed this one too because this panel is interesting. He says, First I'll shed the whiskers and dirt. I'll have to walk 40 feet to the curb. For 40 feet, I'll be visible. I can't do it in this armor, but I can put on a different kind of armor, a $200 custom-tailored suit. The reason why I tabbed this is that's interesting that he not only sees like the actual Iron Man armor as a way to sort of cover up who he really is, but he also sees just the expensive clothes of his identity as Tony Stark is also for him a kind of armor. It's also for him something that is not quite an honest representation of who he really is. So that's interesting too. And then, by the end, he's holing up at a hotel so he can drink some more, basically away from everyone's prying eyes. So that is the end of number 168. So, once again, this is a continuation of the story that started in the last one of these videos. Basically, the Iron Under the Influence storyline that gets progressively more tragic as time goes on. But in this issue, the key thing is we have this number one Marmaduke fan calls the heroes fighting each other in these early periods sort of the Marvel misunderstanding. Well, in this case, what we have is a much more tragic Marvel misunderstanding because the source of the misunderstanding is Tony not being clear, not being sober, and that's the reason why he misunderstands why Machine Man is there. So sorry if I've depressed you all with this issue, but again, this is kind of the mood that I'm in right now. I'm kind of in a drunk Tony mood, so you're going to be seeing a lot more drunk Tony issues in this series, and probably on Monday we're going to do another drunk Tony issue. So I will talk to you then. Thank you for listening.